Happy Thursday and welcome to Sundberg-Ferar's Virtual Design Conversations. This is our last episode of the season of 2020, so we're really excited to have each of you here. Thanks for joining us. My name is Linnea Myers and I'm an industrial designer by training, and here at Sundberg-Ferar, I take care of our marketing and communications as well. So before I turn it over to Jivek, real quick, I'm just going to go over a couple of housekeeping notes for all of you. First things first, if you want to wiggle your mouse, you'll see your Zoom control panel pop up, and there should be a little icon in there that says chat. Please go ahead and open that up. This is where you can send us any of your comments, questions, or feedback, and go ahead and open that up right now. We'd love it if you say hello, tell us where you're calling in from today. We absolutely love your questions. So anything that you send us for our speakers, we will do our best to get to during our time together. I'll also be posting other resources and articles related to what we're talking about today in the chat, so definitely don't want to miss that. As well as our social media where you can like and follow us as well. That is the main housekeeping thing for right now. Without much further ado, I will turn it over to Jivek.
Hey, thank you, Linnea, and thank you everybody for joining us today for our 8th episode of VDC, the Virtual Design Conference. We have 4 amazing speakers literally waiting on the standby to share their viewpoints, their perspectives, their insights. But before that, let me try to share my screen and just try to set the stage just a little bit. So let me just talk about and recapture, or just try to capture the last 8 months in the context of art. But we have to understand what COVID is doing for us also. These are tough times, not just for me or you, not just for your family or city or county, the entire countries, the entire human species as such. It is nature's wake-up call, and I think we are doing, all of us, our best to go and conquer it. But when you say about art and understanding what makes us look at art, or what inspires us, or what drives us, how we try to read those things, it eventually comes down to the element of how we have been evolving for the last, I would say 4.3 billion years. And those kind of an elements of the color combinations, or the breakup of things, or the foreshadowing and the backshadowing, all those things are literally built in our reptilian brain. When we look at something and say like, wow, that's cool, or that's really amazing, that's cultural, that's sexy. All those things, elements come with that kind of an element as such. But apart from that, right now, what we have been looking around is the world of extreme toughness. It is a crisis out there. Means I think there is nothing else that can go. We can need to add a new word to our dictionary to understand what are these torturous times that we are going through. Not just the big, hairy, audacious problems of pollutions and congestions, maybe this year a little bit less, but this itself, our kind of an fragility and our immunity against a virus strain, that itself tells a lot. And the thing is, no matter what, it might be the good part of the world, or now this is the bad part of the world, we're always getting, let's say, a matter of perspective of what we are in our sense of well-being with the impact of the things around us. And that's why we have to understand where we all go and look at those things, right? For me, I find inspiration in the world of nature and in the world of art. And that's why let's try to look at least, let's say, 4 pieces, if not more than then, to look at how we are trying to find things, or are there any markers or triggers, or what we should be doing right now with the time that we have, or the extra time that we have as we go forward. So no matter what, art is always a reflection of the surroundings, the circumstances, the good and the bad elements on ourselves. And that means, in fact, going down to our parts of the work or objects or the interfaces that we design. Let me try to just go, I would say, very briefly on these 4 kind of, and I would say, objects of art. The first one that you might have already seen is the screen. This was done by Edward Munch back in 1890s, right? Times were really different then. And when talking about our mental well-being, I think you know, or most of us know, Munch, he was suffering from mental illness at that time too. And he actually said, and there are plenty of notes and documentation from his side, like, I cannot take away my illness because some of the best works of art were produced during that illness. These are his own notes. Means right now, I think the image, the context of image was, he was walking with his friends, 2 friends, across a higher elevation. I don't know if it's a cliff or a road. He was going across an evening time, across a railing, and then he saw the sunset. The sun was setting in, the sky suddenly became red. For him, it suddenly became blood colored. He saw below the blue-black fjord, the cities dwelling with rippling blood. Those are his words, not mine. And then suddenly he said he stood still. His friend still kept on walking away, and he saw that melancholiness kind of a thing steep into him. But immediately there was a kind of a stark kind of a fear and ambiguity and anxiety filling his inner self, his mind, and he had let go a big scream. He said it opened up my breasts, and that's where he heard the nature scream at itself, and he tried to capture that of what's going on. The element here was the anxiety. The anxiety part is what I think we always deal with. When I say we adults too, each and every day we are faced with plenty of things, and there are the smaller snowballs of anxiety that somehow we just push them back at our mind and eventually try to go on with our lives. But those smaller snowballs in the back of our mind, they start to get accumulated, and then they just collect themselves over there and literally goes into a snowball effect sometime. And that's what it is, elements of how you have to deal with those anxiety. And now, if than ever, means look outside, winter is coming, at least for the northern parts of the United States. It's going to be cold and frigid and gloomy, and it's going to help, not help, it's going to literally affect the way of our mental happiness and selfness going to be along, and understanding how different artists at that time are capturing that. How are we doing that right now? How are we handling anxiety, and not trying to scream at different elements? Means there are elements when you are screaming right now, right? There's so many things coming left and right to you. By the way, he also was, that was 1890s, that there was the Nazi people around him also. By the way, they labeled him as degenerate, and they confiscated most of his artwork also at that time. So time was difficult for him. Let's go to the next one. The next one was literally, again, I think we all know, or we must be knowing, the Starry Night, Van Gogh. One of the beautiful paintings ever. He also had plenty of notes written to his own brother Theo about the time what he was going through. And he voluntarily tells that when he was going with his own psychiatric care, he was also suffering from mental illness, that when this painting was made, most of his prolific work that we know was during a state of extreme chaos, crisis in his own mind. But I just love this painting. It's only one of the only paintings in his series that's based on night themes, and one of the only paintings where he also mentions, actually, to his notes to Theo, his brother, and I know Jim is on the call. He will really appreciate this. Is he told that to his brother, "Hey brother, we can take a train to travel around and see Earth, but it's only death that will take us to go and travel among the stars." And there are plenty of art historians who are trying to make sense of what he really meant by that in the expressionist world. Both himself and Munch were in the expressionist element as such. And one of the ways people are letting us know that it was his kind of an element of, that's the glimmer of hope. I'm going to find my hope or my beacon in the midst of celestial bodies over there. By the way, talking about the painting, it's amazing to see that at that time, it was very difficult to name a painting on the background rather than the foreground. He did not name it farmlands or steeples or anything else. It went back to the Starry Night, where I myself have a little bit more kind of an amateur interest also. Coming to the next one, I would say, I will try to be a little bit more fast. I know Jacklyn is waiting just to be on the stage, but think about the time dilation that we are right now in, right? Salvador Dali's persistence of memory. His last 8 months have been anything but a huge blur. Everything, it's work from home, kids at school, not at school, kids at home, at school. It is really stressful. I think we all know what I mean, that if you have a couple of monkeys running around and rampaging your house, it is a blur happening. There's so many things happening. The TikTok time is still going on. We have to understand how different things are going to blend in or melt in, and how we are going to look forward for those things. So I do not know how we can still try to chunk all these last 8 months. I cannot. I tried really hard in doing that. Maybe in the next month I will try to do that. But we are trying to make sure to make sense of how we're going to use and misuse the time that was given to us. I think some of us made sure that we use this extra time or this time for self-reflection and contemplation. And maybe at some time we can try to reconnect and see what we did or achieved apart from our work in this world of time. Let me dwell a little bit on Pablo Picasso's, some of his paintings he did. Means I understand to now do my own interpretation of this multitude of faces and multitude of doing so many things at hand. You're doing this and this and this and this, and is it burdening us all? Are we trying to get too much disturbed by these too much distractions around us? Means we all know, you know right now, if I ask you to raise your hand, none of you can raise the hand and say like, I'm devoid of TikTok and WhatsApp and this Facebook elements that are bombarding things to us, just following things. And we are just going from one domain to another domain just to escape this domain to the next domain. And that kind of an element of what's happening to us. Are we trying to really make some good, meaningful, purposeful, beautiful work? The work can be written paragraphs, it can be graphics, it can be products too, but trying to understand how we're dealing with it. And the way these amazing artists, these are some amazing people, did some amazing artwork. But coming back to everyday people like us, maybe you too, or maybe somewhere in between, how are we going to use this time of understanding this pain and suffering that's going out in the market, and trying to make sure we can somehow squeeze that into the work we do? It might be a piece of furniture, it might be fabric we're designing, it might be the connectivity for newer products to get connected, or the newer elements of what industrial design can do. And I think that's where we become in trying to make sure we're all trying to advance it further, right? And we have four speakers who will speak a little bit more about their own personal journeys, what they have been doing, and what excites them, what inspires them, and how they are trying to look at the future as we go forward. So coming back onto the world of VDCs, right? Means that we are right now, this, as I said, is our eighth episode. But we're going to see how this art element is going to be strong, how we're going to be strong enough to be against that COVID, that beast of a COVID, right? And that's where I think the comparing and contrast comes. What can we as designers or design-minded people can bring the strength, the impact, and leverage the element of beauty, which is not just superficial, which actually goes to the entire visual architecture of the product itself, can go and tackle this beast. This beast is not just here right now. The second wave, there will be a third wave, there will be a fourth wave of this or something else. We have to make sure how we can tackle it and use it in our day-to-day applications of what we are doing. We had over the range of 8 episodes, about more than 45 speakers come in and join and share their perspectives, their stories, their jokes. They made us laugh, they made us cry, they made us think. And I think going that with today's kind of an deal, we have 4 amazing distinguished speakers, each in their own kind of an expertise world, coming here just to be a little bit vulnerable on stage, share their own studies, their own experiences, try to see what makes them tick, where they get their inspiration from, and then how they're trying to assemble that into the products of their work life or their own personal lives as such. So I think without further ado, I think I see Jacklyn there on the stage. Let us invite Jacklyn on the stage, and we can take it from over there. Hello, Jacklyn. How are you doing?
How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm coming to you from Jasper, Indiana, but my background is actually from Nagoya, Japan, where I spent about 3 years living, and we'll talk about a little bit today.
Yes, I'm so impressed by that virtual background. I wish I was there right now, and that's a beautiful photo. That's absolutely
and it's
photo.
A beautiful time of year for cherry blossom season, because Hanami is where they basically enjoy the falling flowers, and they get together with their friends and they drink and they just enjoy their time together. And I so miss Hanami. It's such a short period of time in Japan, but so beautiful.
It is. It is. I always heard about that. I have never been to Japan yet, but maybe one day we'll make sure we'll be inspired by what you want to share. We'll go over there. But before we hand it over to you, Jacklyn, I'm just interested about your love for extreme sports. I know you have been in competitive skiing and wakeboarding. Let us know a little bit about what made you do that, and are you still keeping in touch with those extreme sports? What were those? Some of them I know, not all of them.
Sure. So I have to say I get most of that adventure from my father. He was a very big water skier, snow skier, and I think he wanted a firstborn son, and he got me. And so he decided that he would make me do all the things that he loved, so he had someone else to do it with. And he made me keep up with him too, which is, I think, where I get most of my competitive nature. By the time I got to college, I was competing in water skiing, which is a very unique competitive process. Even to this day, I met my husband as a competitive water skier. And that seems to get in the way sometimes too, when you have 2 competitive people in the same house. But you know, now as adults, when we go on vacation, typically we're going mountain biking, we're going snowboarding, we're doing all those things that really give us passion outside of work together. And that really brings a lot of joy to our life. But after 5 knee surgeries, I'm probably not in the same competitive nature I used to be. I enjoy a lot more of surfing now, wake surfing behind a boat. I still do a lot of snowboarding, as I was an instructor for about 8 seasons on my hometown hill. And I find a lot of peace being out in nature doing those things. And so that's kind of my Ikigai, as I'll describe today, is those passions that I find out in nature, doing sports and pushing myself and challenging myself is how I really find that in my own life.
Awesome. That's pretty awesome. And I think I do a little bit of extreme sports, but none of the ones that you mentioned. I suck at snowboarding. I mean, literally, I think my friends drag me to the hill just to have something to make fun at. I'm okay with that. I'm still trying to able to find my footing.
Everybody sucks the first couple times. It just takes time.
Not for the couple of times for last many years. Maybe I do not know how to be stable on this slippery situations. I know you will cover this, but you when we went to Japan, you also were studying over there, right? You added to the wealth of your knowledge by going to a business school in Japan. Is that right?
Yes, I went to NUCB, which is the Nagoya University of Commerce and Business. They have a very interesting way of looking at business school. I did my MBA over there. And they do a Harvard process, like all of the Harvard business reviews as a case study basis. So a lot of those classes, they look at true case studies of different concepts in the business world and then bring them to class. You participate, you argue, you bring up your own points of view, you write papers and you share, you test and things like that. But I'm so grateful for that experience because I learned so much more about global business being one of 2 Americans in the class and having my whole class be from across the world. And so doing my MBA was such a blessing in Japan because I had a totally different experience than I ever would have had I done it in the States, and really perked up my knowledge about global business and how excited I am to keep diving into that.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So you're an industrial designer, you are a business person, and with the extreme sports you can kick some ass. So that's a pretty solid combination. So let me hand it over to you. If you want, you can share your screen. We can go with kind of an your story, and then at the end we'll save some time from Q&A also.
Sure. Alrighty, Rob, can you see my screen all right?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Alrighty, so as Jacques mentioned, I'm Jacklyn Ady. I'm currently the Director of Product Design and Development for Versteel. We're based in Jasper, Indiana. We are a high-quality solutions provider of design-forward American-made furnishings for working and learning environments, guided by a commitment of product versatility, precision craftsmanship, and excellence of service from design to delivery. And I think as we kind of hit on is why am I here today? I think this is why I am here today. Now, I spent almost 3 years in Japan. My husband is an engineer for Toyota and got to work on the new Highlander. So if you see that car out on the road, we're very proud of that new design, I have to say. But I think more, however, I am here because of this experience. This is my graduation at NUCB. And what I'm going to talk about today is this concept of Ikigai, which I didn't actually learn the word of until I left Japan. It's something that I saw all the time. And my warning label to this is that I am not an expert on Japanese culture. I can bring you my own experience, but I do not speak for all of Japan. So please take everything I say with, a grain of salt. My Japanese is a little rusty too, so bear with me. But Ikigai actually translates into basically this idea of the reason for being. Iki is to live and Gai is reason. A lot of people translate it to the happiness of being busy. And in Japanese language, it applies to very small things or very big things, but it doesn't have to necessarily be professional. It's really the celebration and diversity of life. So it can be a large goal, but it can be a morning cup of coffee. It can be the full richness of the spectrum is who really usually benefits from this. People that can enjoy that, something monumental or something mundane is like very small or complicated tasks. I typically translate it to that quote in the Western world that we talk about, like the joy of the journey. When you think about flow, you think about mindfulness. When you are in a project or you're in a task and you forget to have lunch or you forget to take a break and several hours have passed and you're in the here and now and you're in that, that's how I really kind of feel that this concept translates to. And I think it's so important for us as Americans because I am one of those goal achievers with a type A personality. A lot of my sense of self-worth used to be tied to achievements and successes. And as a competitive athlete, it's, I got to win. I have to be, the best person in the room. But I think what we've come to find is that recognition, depending on your boss, is random and sometimes far between. So if you make the effort of this process your primary source of happiness, you will achieve the most important challenge of your life. And that inner joy and satisfaction can carry you through the really hard times, which I think we're kind of seeing right now. And when we break it down, there's this great Venn diagram, and there's a ton of great Ikigai books out there. If you Google it on Amazon, you'll find a lot. It basically is this connection of what you love and what you can make money with, what the world needs, what you're good at. And that translates into your passion, your mission, your profession, and your vocation. And what's interesting is that, you know, in the Western world, we look at work as this necessary evil, but the Japanese embrace work as something that's valuable in itself. So many people don't retire in Japan because the state of flow makes work so sustainable and enjoyable that they really stick with it for a long time. And there's also this concept of Ichigo Ichi that we'll kind of hit on a little bit today. It means a one time, one encounter. And this is the thing that I saw many times over in Japan, is that there's an ephemeral description that every opportunity is very special, that the tiniest detail is life or death. So this idea of once-ness of life's encounters and pleasures provides basically the foundation for this concept of Ikigai, and it's central to the philosophy for life. So when you take notice of the small details, nothing is ever repeated, every opportunity is special. So I have to say that this was most of my experience in Japan. I am a ramen connoisseur. I have really tasted all of Southeast Asia with my taste buds. I also got to experience it with all these wonderful ephemeral experiences. This is me on the left, doing a Maiko experience. It's basically geishas in training. They train their whole life as a Maiko, learning different skills, learning how to play instruments. When my girlfriends and I did a little trip to Kyoto, we actually stayed next to one of the training halls and listened to them play their music from like dawn to dusk. It was a really incredible experience. There's so many sensory experiences that Japan has that I think brings this magical element to it. You know, when you think about these little details, like you probably can't tell from this picture, but my eyebrows are actually painted on here because my eyebrows are not the correct shape of typical Maikos. The makeup on the back, if you look on the right picture, which is actually my friend Sydney, the tiniest little detail is always so special and so sacred. The way the back of her neck is painted is really important. But again, like I said, most of my experience was tasting ramen. The bottom left is the best meal I've ever had in my whole entire life, which is a tonkatsu ramen with a pork spare rib. Just the most amazing sensory experience I've ever had. And I think you can learn a lot about Ikigai looking at different food in Japan, because it's so carefully crafted and down to the nicest, tiniest detail. If you look at the ramen in the top left, there's actually the name of the ramen place singed into the soft-boiled egg. And watching them do this process, they do it with such care and they do it with such intention that you can't help but look at it. And for the longest time, I thought it was this pride in work, but it really is this concept of Ikigai. And trust me, this is fugu, blowfish, which is highly poisonous. You want somebody with that preparing this dish, because should you touch it or eat it and it's not correctly prepared, you definitely want someone with Ikigai who is preparing that. The other interesting thing about this concept is sustainability. You know, sustainability really is an art in life. And one of the best concepts about Ikigai talks about a person being a forest. You know, we're individual yet connected. We're dependent on others for growth, but we stand on our own. And in the long process of life, we all stumble and fall. We all have failures. But Ikigai travels with you from cradle to grave, no matter what happens in your life. And with that, that idea of Ichigo Ichi, enjoying the moment. There's actually a phrase for watching the leaves change color. Koyo refers to the changing of the colors, and people actually gather together in these big festivals and these wonderful like sitting areas where you have food and drink and friends who actually watch the leaves change colors. And along with that, there's so many gardens that bloom 100% of the year. I remember the first winter we spent there, I saw flowers in the winter and I just thought it was so magical, but it was someone that was taking the time to make sure that the sustainability of the garden was always happening. And probably the best experience that you can ever have if you want to do it in person is a tea ceremony in Japan. which is kind of the pinnacle of Ikigai. The smallest detail is always paid attention to. This one was actually from a Nagoya tea house, which is where my picture is from. There's actually gold medal flakes in the tea and in the sweet. You know, the flower that's hung, the scroll that's put on the wall, that is the biggest detail of attention is always focused. There's a spirit of humility, which is the hallmark of the master and the guest. No matter how many years you do tea ceremony, you bring that humility with you everywhere you go. I practiced tea ceremony for almost 3 years, and I think I got halfway through it. It's a very complicated and wonderful, long process. And there's this pleasure that my sensei always encouraged me to take of just enjoying the sensory details of the room rather than trying to master it. Staying in that state of mindfulness, you bring your inner cosmos into the tea room from your mind, and you share that with everyone you do it with. And a lot of the tea ceremony wares, they're used for decades, sometimes hundreds of years, which really talks to sustainability too. And probably my last favorite example is whiskey. Because if you think about it, there's no real reason for Japan to make whiskey since they don't grow barley or have any peat, but they've dedicated themselves to creating really excellent whiskey. And that's really an example of a labor of love. You know, the chief blender of Suntory, he's so dedicated to keeping his palate reliable. He eats the same exact meal for lunch every single day. And whiskey is kind of a long-term game. So a lot of the things he did decades ago, he's just starting to see the fruits of that work now. But a lot of the things he's working on now, a lot of the whiskeys he's blending, he will maybe never see to come to fruition, but he shows up every day and he brings that Ikigai with him when he comes to work. So I've got 10 basic rules I'll go through real quick, and I will translate them into my business rules that I've brought with me. And that first one is stay active and don't retire. There's not really a word in Japanese for retirement. And I will tell you, with someone that worked with someone at Toyota, people don't retire. They may have a party when they get older, but they'll still come back to work, or they'll be a consultant, or they'll do something in some instance. You stay active in all stages of your life. The second one is to take it slow. Instead of rushing your daily tasks, you try to savor and enjoy them for the sake of your Ikigai. Number 3 is don't fill your stomach. There's a really nice phrase, hara hachibu, which means fill your belly basically 80%. The idea that less is more in the long term for a long life. Surrounding yourself with good friends. I think we all know that friendship and laughter is like the best medicine. It's where you get advice, you have fun, you dream. It's, you know, where you live outside of work. And the 5th one is get in shape for your next birthday. I climbed Fuji, and I remember, like we discussed, I'm a pretty competitive athlete and I try to stay in shape, but I will tell you that I had probably 3 80-year-olds pass me on the way up to Fuji that probably climb it every single weekend. You know, the Japanese don't take strenuous exercise like we do here, but they take movement very seriously. And you can see people going to the grocery store and walking every single day, no matter how old they are. The 6th is to smile, you know, do your best to stay positive, no matter what life throws at you. Reconnecting with nature. I think we all know that human beings are meant to be part of the natural world. So the idea that you return to it as much as you can is very important. Giving thanks for being grateful. You know, many busy schedules leave us feeling super overwhelmed and super stressed. But really, at the end of the day, today is all we have. So, you know, we try to make the best of it and make it worth remembering. Living in the moment. Again, just not feeling overwhelmed, making today worth remembering, and finding your Ikigai. So inside each of us, we have our own passion, we have our own unique talent. Being able to share that with others is what gives meaning to our days. So as I loosely translated this for business, it reads as follows. You know, remaining in forward motion, working with intention, not being greedy, surrounding yourself with good partners, which goes a very long way, especially in times like now. Always building your competencies and looking forward. Smile stays the same for me. The more positive attitude you have, no matter what comes your way, you're going to find a way through it. I think most creative people inherently know that skill set. Reconnecting with passions outside of work. You know, we're not all made to go to work, and die. We have lives outside of it. And for me, Netflix binge session is great on the weekend, but where I really get my rejuvenation, where I come back with clear eyes and a whole heart, is when I do my passions outside of work, and that makes me work better and harder. Being gracious and humble, that translates pretty easily. Staying present and paying attention to what's going on. I'll talk through a couple of the design projects we've done recently that will be very important. And for me, Ikigai for business is building your competitive advantage, knowing what makes you you, and sharing that passion with the world. So what I did is I basically took our mission vision statement and I put it into that Venn diagram. So if you want to take a look at your own mission statement, you can put these 4 circles together and see how they line up. For us, our biggest passion is design, and we make money by selling standard furniture because we make really good American-made furniture, and we do that for work and learning environments. So that really comes down to our quality, our attention to versatility in our product development, our craftsmanship, and again, those solutions that we provide. So we don't just provide a desk or table, we provide a whole room. So I'll go through a couple of quick projects with a couple of our designers. This is our Quantum Max chair, which was designed by Roberto Lucci. He's been designing products, is an Italian designer since the 1960s, and he's actually designed over 400 products that have been in the market 15, 20, 30 years. I absolutely love working with Roberto because he's got such a wealth of knowledge. Design maximization is this concept he came up with of basically developing many variants from one design concept, just like nature. And his theory kind of focuses on collections instead of a single product. So for us, again, it goes to that full solutions and provides a whole lot of different environments. And because we value design, we get to tap on local designers. Actually, this is still one from Roberto Lucci, our Paces table, and that comes from the idea of how our high quality furniture and how strong this is. This leg is the most, the strongest quality piece that we can actually physically produce in our manufacturing facility. And it also comes from this idea of when you're standing as a person, you have your legs put out. That's one of the strongest stances you can take. And so that's the inspiration behind this one. Like I mentioned, since design is so important to us, we also tap on local designers in the States. So this table is called Model 8 from Jonathan Neshi. He's an American designer who does iconic mid-century furniture, very minimalistic, very beautiful, with clean aesthetic and a lot of monochromatic colors. For us, we did a lot of work with this extruded aluminum legs on here, which was a real push for our manufacturing. But at the heart of who we are is that we are a metal fabrication company. That's actually how we got our start. Versteel is versatility in steel. So the last couple projects I'll talk through, we'll talk about not only how design push manufacturing, but how manufacturing can start to give some ideas towards that as well. So our performance line is by far my favorite aesthetic. We use an induction brazing technique where you actually electromagnetically weld from the inside out. So that gives us the ability to make this really nice seamless look. And we have a lot of competitors that do something very similar to this, but not as cleanly. They'll do it in a way that's just a little more crude. And for us, we buff out all the welds, we make everything nice and clean. We're really inherently focused on keeping that design aesthetic. This is Thea, another one designed by Roberto. We dubbed this our artistic sensibility built to fuel productivity. So not only something that's productive, but something that's also beautiful. And this one was a real push for design to bend this leg at the precise bend that it is at, and then making sure that we keep all that clean, buffing out all the welds. And I love this one because your surface on here is always clean, and you've got a PowerPoint at every corner. So it's really built for function, but it's also beautiful at the same time. We do a ton of solid surface, especially in our custom business. So that's what this top is shown here. So when we look at sustainability, a lot of times we look at materials. And what we did recently with COVID is we took some of our scrap material and said, what can we do with some of this leftover and actually turn it into a product design? You know, one of my biggest fears from COVID is that we're going to see a lot of acrylic in the trash and the garbage here. So we've tried to push some of this a little further since then, but this was one that we could at least use all the scrap we have in a different way, and then come up with something that was a great retrofit for current offices that are struggling with getting people back in the workplace right now. Sky is a really great one. It's our height adjustable sit-to-stand desk that focuses on function but keeps design at the forefront. So customers get the choice of 5 different base styles here. And you can get these base styles to match a couple other lines that we have. So you really have an aesthetic that matches your work and work that supports the look as well. And we're looking at alternate markets and applications with COVID, which has been a really unique experience for us recently. And that led to another design we came up with this summer when COVID hit. You know, my fear of these acrylic panels ending up in the trash or the garbage really led to remembering who we are authentically as a company, as we are a metal fabrication company. So what we came up with is these panels, and you can certainly get these in acrylic, but we also really love doing them in metal. And because our manufacturing is right next door, we can do these in a ton of different styles. Those 5-base styles, you get to match your current aesthetic with your partitions now. We did these with the 3-caster versions to support that functionality, so you can get people working next to each other, but not have these bases in the way. You know, we always try to keep the human in the center of these designs. So that means really prototyping and using these ourselves and figuring out some of those nuances. And because we have that manufacturing facility next door, we have 42 different powder coat options, which gives us a lot of design choices. We've been playing with printing on acrylic, which gives us this wellness factor we can bring into, a custom factor that we can provide for our customers. So if they say, hey, I want to put my logo on one of these partitions, I want to say walk to the left, walk to the right, whatever it may be, we can actually custom print those on there as well. And then the beauty of that is, let's say you don't need a partition at the end of COVID, should we ever see the end of it, you can hang that on your wall. It could be something that's a living piece of artwork. And we always look at technology to kind of push us in a different way too. So one of the fun things we found this summer was a powder coat that you actually can dry erase right on. So these became not only partitions, but vertical work surfaces as well. And those really transform spaces from just separation dividers to something that is the new now for our design solutions. We did a couple of other fun kind of aesthetic choices as far as partitioning. These are pretty popular with restaurants around here. They're a different way to separate spaces that aren't just a piece of eclair cutout. And where we have our biggest competitive advantage is we do a ton of custom work. So because our manufacturing facility is right next door, you know, if somebody calls and says, I want this table 2 inches higher, I want it 3 inches longer, we say, okay, no problem. A lot of times we'll get custom requests that are very detailed and they will ask for things that maybe we wouldn't typically have thought of right away. So we try to incorporate that in our standard furniture as much as possible. What's great is it's also a direct line to the customer. So we're really getting to hear what people want. And because we have our manufacturing process right next door, we have the ability to play, which is my favorite thing about design. You know, paying attention with Ikigai, we know what's going on in the world, and we're trying to be adaptable and resilient. You know, with COVID, we talk a lot about antimicrobial finishes. So the project we played with this summer is called Geometrics. It actually uses chlorine solid surface and these different architectural elements that has an artistic feeling, but is very easy to clean, very easy to maintain, very durable. Again, here and now. We added this element of technology because we see customers asking more and more for technology in everything and everywhere. So these can kind of serve as end tables. They can serve as collaboration spaces. They can serve as something in your lobby. They serve a lot of different varying environments. And that ability to play and that push from COVID for, you know, touchless surfaces is what pushed us to play with this. So we have a wireless Zenz unit that actually has a top cap in it. And what we said this summer is, what if we could get that to translate through the chlorine so you didn't have any top piece at all? You could just wipe it down and go on your merry way. So we played a lot around with this so we could actually do the routing and transmit the wireless charge through the chlorine, which came with a lot of failure, but also came with a lot of really fun stuff. So I have about 1,000 of these bad boys hanging around that we played with, but that's really that beauty of design and engineering and manufacturing coming together. And it's so authentically us that we can add more products like this to our standard collection. So I'll leave you with the 5 kind of pillars of Ikigai. We hit on quite a few of these throughout the presentation. The idea of starting small. Releasing yourself is really letting go of your ego. Harmony and sustainability, the joy of the small things, being in the here and now. So if you want to incorporate this into your everyday, the best thing to think about is like what your most sentimental value is, the small things that give you pleasure. Now, one of the biggest benefits of Ikigai is this robustness and resilience, which are both necessary in tragedy. And being resilient in life is really important, especially with the chaos today. You have a lot of chaos in your heart, it's really hard to find happiness, but the grain of So I would give you is that you can't blame your environment, and you shouldn't blame your environment on your lack of Ikigai. It's up to you to find it. You know, this is, like I said, you know, happiness comes from within regardless of the situation. But this concept gives you purpose, and it gives you the grit to carry on no matter what the world brings. And I'll leave you with it. Arigatou gozaimashita. That's the gist of my presentation.
That was fantastic, Jacklyn. That's really awesome. I barely know a few languages, but Japanese is pretty difficult and impossible to literally go and I would say work on. But thank you again for just, I like the entire narrative of the entire presentation. You started with your own experiences in the Japanese culture, how it helped you mold your own, I would say, kind of an signature or style, if I may call it, as going forward. And then I like the Venn diagrams of what Ikigai is, and then your own kind of an understanding of how it might transfer to Versteel. There are so many questions just in the Ikigai area, but maybe I can start with the most simplest one or most straightforward one that should come out. Like, this pandemic, this COVID thing is happening. Has it impacted your ability to maintain your own Ikigai?
Yes. I would be lying if I said it didn't. And, you know, we've had to really adapt and shift and pivot really quickly, because we had certain projects we had planned on happening that we had suppliers shut down, and they shut down for almost 6 months. I mean, some of them are just getting back to normal now, and we're looking at another lockdown. So, you know, luckily for us, because we are American made, almost everything, you know, 98% of what we have is all in America, but still America's supply chains are really struggling. So I would say that for me personally, what I did is I am one of those crazy 4:30 a.m. people that get up and get on my Peloton, or I work out, or I do yoga. For me, if I find that every day, I can take on the chaos a whole lot better. And I've established that Ikigai in my own kind of personal area. And so I feel like I've already won once I've got to there. And then everything else is, I take it with as it comes. And I try to be adaptable and resilient in that process, because it's been so unpredictable and it's been so hard to plan. And so I feel luckily as a creative that we are some of the most resilient dreamers that there are. So I'm grateful for that ability in my own toolbox.
Well, that's the great answer. I think I like it because I also do the similar thing. Sometimes just hitting the gym just clears your cobwebs, and suddenly you are in a kind of a newer kind of a state of good excitedness. So I do that. But the mind just is clear when you go for a nice trail run. I just enjoy that. Coming back to your own, I would say, immersion into the Japanese culture. If I may, what was the hardest thing for you to learn in your immersion of the Japanese culture, both as a personal culture and as a business culture?
Oh, so, you know, the interesting thing about Japan is I thought some things would be similar, but there was not a single thing in that whole entire country that was similar to America. I had worse culture shock when we moved back than when we moved there. Wow. Because there were so many things that changed my perspective and opened my world that I had never even thought about. And at first they were kind of frustrating. You know, one of the first instances I think of seeing Ikigai in Japan was a parking attendant that helped us park. And I was like, I can park my car. Like, I have a Prius. This is going to be great. And he, you know, guided me in, and he was very slow and methodical, and he was thankful. And I remember thinking how prideful they were about their work and how much joy he took in doing that, and being like, wow, what a powerful idea behind that. But I found a lot of frustrations in trying to do simple things that in America would be very easy, like going to the post office, mailing something home to my mother, you know, paying bills. You have to pay a lot of bills at convenience stores, and you have to do them a certain way on a certain day. And for me, I had always done, you know, internet banking. So that was very interesting to learn. I think there is a fastness in America that is not present in a lot of Japan life. And so for me, going from 100 miles an hour, working full-time as a career professional to nothing was this very strange void that I thought would be a blessing and was very scary place to be, which I think maybe many people have found through the pandemic, that now they have all this time and now what do you do with it? And so I luckily got to ask myself, what do I really want to do right now? And I had looked at doing my MBA for a while. I had found the school before we moved and had thought that it would be a really great chance. I had found a nonprofit that I wanted to be a part of and ended up running for a year. And that was really great. But that was a pretty big hill to climb, because my main duties that first week when my husband went to Toyota were to do the laundry, to find grocery shopping, which was more complicated than I thought it would be, and to make sure that everything was straightened out at home. And for me, that was something I hadn't ever thought about before. And that was like a shift in perspective. On the business side, a lot of my conversations in our MBA classes, I am a native English speaker, and learning how to communicate more effectively to my colleagues in that program was a little bit of a challenge at first. So I think if you compared my language now into how I used to speak before Japan, it would be a lot different. I speak a lot slower with intention. I try to use words meaningfully when they're really deserving of that. And so it helped my communication. But I remember trying to rattle off something and it not making sense, I think, to most of the other speakers. And so that has been a true skill set, but also something that I really had to work on in business school.
That's beautiful. It's the intentionality of it, the curation of words. Also, words mean a lot. Words are just like weapons. It depends on how you use it. That's pretty amazing. I was just writing a couple of things about let's say over there and here. And you said over there is a no thought of retirement. I think over here people will go crazy, because you're right, in this kind of an rat race, fast paced, 75, 100 miles per hour kind of an sprint we all are in. People are actively looking out for that destination, like, dang, I'm going to get retired. And that will be a completely different contrast to go over there where, we are here we are connected to the forest, the urban or the natural forest, and we are just going to be here. I can see some people right now whom I know, they will just go bonkers, like, what, no retirement? And it will just go and take it from over there. The other thing that really surprised me also was, you don't fill your stomach. That kind of an 80% rule that we apply to the business world also, 20-80%, that's pretty interesting. And I think looking at even the immunity of our entire population, or even the obesity of our entire population, just kind of, and that thoughtfulness in trying to know when to stop or trying to know when not to go over seems to be pretty interesting one. So
yeah, I think, Rocco, along with that, like when you think of a traditional bento box, right, it doesn't seem like a lot of food, but it satisfies all of those flavors and it has all of those colors and varieties. And I'll say that I'm probably 10 pounds heavier now than I was in Japan, because I think you eat a lot of that food with your eyes and your stomach, and you satisfy more than just your hunger. You satisfy the salty, you satisfy the sweet, you satisfy, the carbs and the meat, and they all go together in this beautiful, harmonious way. And there's so much more satisfaction when you hit that 80% that you're done with your meal and you feel fulfilled and satisfied from it.
I love that. I love the bento box things. Means where we work in Wall Lake, there's an amazing restaurant called Shiro, and they just have an amazing blend of making those bento boxes. So I completely understand that function. When you look at it, the satisfaction of the curation of how you place things and what do you eat first and what else comes, it is so fulfilling, so satisfying that you're not going to just hog down the entire pasta or pizza as such. Now that's pretty interesting. But I think if this is maybe a silly question, but a foundational question, this kind of an Ikigai structure seems so nice and mature. When do you, when I say you, means let's say a Japanese person, do they learn when they're a teenager, when they're in kindergarten, or that is just the way of life that wherever they go, since they're an infant to a growing adult, how does this get imbibed? Is there a special thing you do to understand this, or just there?
I think it's both. My husband did Japanese Taiso, which is most Ikigai in almost every office at 6:30, and HK actually plays this choreographed stretching that they all do in the office together. But I think students, kids learn that at a very young age of how to appreciate their surroundings. They have 2 times a year, they close down all the classes, so they clean their classroom, which, you know, gives them respect for their environment. It helps them enjoy the season change. It's so ingrained in a lot of their culture too, that I think it's something that you may not have a word for, but you inherently learn from being a part of that culture. Because I honestly had never heard it before we came back, but I had experienced it multiple times. So I think it's both. And I think depending on the person you are, you find it in different ways, because there's actually this Japanese word for death by overwork. I think it's karoshi. You know, the Japanese workday compared to
I should write down that word right now.
It compared to our workday is a lot longer. My husband's hours here are typical hours, you know, 8 to 5, 6, 7, depending on if he has a mini. His typical hours in Japan, he would leave at 6 and get home at 8, 9, 10, a couple times 1 o'clock, because their work ethic is so much higher. They have this commitment to staying in the office until your boss leaves. And so what ends up happening is a lot of people in Japan are extreme hobbyists, because outside of work, they have something that they really love and are very passionate about. And so it's not like you and I, we say, yeah, we like hiking and mountain biking. It's like they do everything with hiking. They have all the greatest gear. They read all the greatest magazines. They do all the blog. They do everything they can around that. And they really dive into that and they invest in it. And that's so much a part of who they are. That gives them passion, that gives them that ability to go back to work with a whole heart and clear eyes.
That makes sense. There are questions coming in from the audience also. I think you did try to touch upon this element about what would happen post-COVID, about the excessive elements of acrylics or sheets we might look in the trash. There's a question about Dianira, how recycling and reuse of materials will impact for you the design projects in the future.
Yeah, I hope it impacts and we carry that through a lot more, because like I said, my greatest fear as a product designer is that it ends up in the trash. And we certainly don't want to design single-use items or single-function items. And so when we talk about sustainability as a company, yes, we talk about materials and we try to look at that as much as possible. We're trying to look at, you know, can we almost maybe buy back and recycle some of our materials from our clients if it has come to their end of their life. But we also look at it from a functionality standpoint. So we try to open our product development process to say, what else could you use these for, rather than just a solitary primary use? Could you use these as vertical work surfaces? Or, you know, metal's naturally magnetic, luckily, so you can hang magnets on it. You can use it as another presentation surface, things like that. So when we look at sustainability, we try to look at it in multiple ways, along with our workforce too. So in trying to, when we brought on acrylic, we had never done any acrylic before, because we are a metal fabrication company, and we converted 3 of our working machines to all run acrylic at full capacity within a matter of, I believe, 2.5 weeks, which is a huge kudos to our manufacturing team for putting the work in, doing the due diligence to figure that out. And that is a new capacity we built because of COVID that we may have never looked at before. But learning and growing as a team in a manufacturing facility, I think is going to help us prepare for what is to come next, so we can stay in tune with that.
And just trying to extend or connecting back to the other element of, right now, we all know, I mean, at least me or Lane or most of the audience is working from home. I know at Workplace, we have a beautiful office, we have a beautiful furniture. It's not Versteel yet, but we have, I miss my, the entire allocation, I would say, and a curation that was over there. And now I'm here banished to my spare bedroom. I do not know, nobody knows how long this will last. They looks like the vaccine is on the horizon, but after 2 years, again, a new strain is going to come. You are in the world of office furniture environment. Now this going to working from home element, how are you looking at that kind of an organic growth area, or is going to be the element for the home furniture people? How do you look about that mixed hybrid space now?
Yeah, so I think some of what we're doing now is looking into the past. So, you know, when flus happened in the past, when yellow fever happened in the past, look at that impact on architecture. How much more light was let into apartments, how they started putting window partitions between apartments. A lot of that I always joke that a good stretch hurts, but some of that has made our lives so much better. Back during the large flu in the early 1900s, they started doing a lot of outdoor classrooms. I can't give away too much, but we're looking at alternative markets for us to go into. I think the companies who will survive and thrive post-COVID are the ones that are going to look at themselves and their values and stick to their vision statements and be authentic in what they're moving towards next. So that may be a change in the market. It may be a change in how they bring it. But I think at the end of the day, they'll still be authentically themselves. And that uniqueness is going to be what carries them through. It's going to bring them business again. We're looking at different ways of working because we are really primarily focused on working in learning environments and reaching out to our reps, our dealers, our customers to say, what are your clients asking for right now? What are they looking to do? And that changes all across the country. And luckily we have those people situated all across the country. So we're trying to focus on having those conversations and making sure that we're a part of them as much as possible.
That's beautiful. There are questions still coming in. I will try to succinctly ask this question. It's from Dutch. You work from an all-American company. Your training is from Japan. You live in Indiana. So you have a global perspective. But how is this embraced by your department or the other leadership in Versteel about this amazing discipline you're bringing in the company?
I'm assuming that's why they hired me. It's probably the same reason that I spend time working with a lot of different nonprofit boards is I have a totally different perspective than probably anyone in the company currently has, anyone in the leadership team currently has. And so given the right group with the right leader, that's really seen as an asset. And I've been really lucky to have so many different experiences that I get to bring to the table. And I think I'm really grateful for it all because, in the Midwest, it's hard to keep up with what's going on outside of the world unless you get out and see it. So every chance I get, I try to take that advantage. And luckily I work for a company that uses a ton of Italian designers. So when COVID hit, we had just come back from Italy the week before, unfortunately. But being able to spend that time with the designers, with the experience I had, I think was such a different take for our company to interact with them that they had never had before, that my boss was grateful for it. Because there's certain cultural cues that I learned in Japan that I carry with me in every place that I visit. And it can be something as small as I loved this Japanese concept of you always bring gifts everywhere you go, especially when you visit someone in their home. And so that was one of the things I brought to one of the Italian designers. I brought some chocolate, some American-made chocolate. And I remember my boss saying, what a nice little thing to do. And I didn't really think about it too much because every place we went in Japan, we got a gift. We brought it back to the office. We brought it back to our friends. It was just something that was inherently part of me. And so for me, I carry that to the people that I work with and my employees. And I always try to write thank you notes and give that gratitude and appreciation. And that teamwork flourishes so much better when we all bring that together.
That's beautiful. I know we are coming to the top of the hour. A couple of more questions, I think, and then we will have Jim, who is waiting patiently on the backstage. I think you are an American-made kind of an company. There's a question here from Michael. It might be connecting to that about how do you calculate the return on investment, especially when you are doing it right over here, which has good and I would say other points also in the costing, in the investment world.
In the investment, I'm not sure if I understand.
How do you calculate return on investment? So I think maybe it depends on how you are going to read the question. Or I will read the question as it's a design-centric kind of a company going forward. And as you're saying, going back to now is the time to go back to your manifesto, your design charter, the authenticism of it. What would be those at authenticism and how it unfolds in the future? Nobody knows, but let's go back to the authenticism of the company. What does make the DNA of your company? Because that's an investment, right?
Yeah, I think being American made and supporting our manufacturing as much as possible is a huge component of that. But making sure that we honor design and we're always looking forward. That's an investment that we make that has proven to historically always come back as a return on investment. A lot of the innovations that we had in the early 90s are still paying off now. So we are still going to make that investment moving forward in design, but making sure that we are doing manufacturing justice. We are choosing the right machinery for the time being. We are supporting them with maybe new materials like stainless steel, and making those decisions so we can put ourselves in the best financially comfortable seat that we possibly can.
That's awesome. Beautiful. Once again, Jacklyn, thank you again for your time. I love the narrative of the Ikigai. And sometimes you always hear bits and pieces over here, but I think the narrative of what it attains, your passions in life, what the world needs, what you need, what your community needs, and how no matter what, everything is so interrelated. And finally, it comes down to your own basic kind of an, I would say, ethos or the ambition in you of what you want to do. And maybe now going forward, I should watch my use of words and try to be not rattle around and try to be a little bit more deliberate in choosing them. So thank you once again, Jacklyn, and feel free to just be on the panel. You might want to unvideo yourself and maybe mute yourself, but be a part of the discussion. And thank you once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was amazing, gentlemen and ladies in the audience. That was Jacklyn from Versteel. I think I personally am always overjoyed to understand more kind of tidbits and bits from the Japanese philosophy and the culture. And it is so soothing, not just to see, I would say, a nice kind of an bonsai or the image that actually Jacklyn shared about a nice vista going out from the house and looking at the autumn leaves. It's really enchanting, mesmerizing. And then the onus is on us as designers to how to absorb that kind of I would say, experiential elements and then somehow squeeze them into your processes, your design philosophies, maybe your manufacturing processes as such.